Oh, what about your mantra? Are you gonna be able to do it from memory? Compassionate,
Oh
considerate.
yeah. No, I got this.
So got it.
Yes, so got this. All right, so welcome to Talking in the Chasm, compassionate, controversial conversation between best friends. Holy man,
And an atheist. I'm Matthew.
I'm Felix.
It's good to be
All
back
right.
together again.
Yes, in a blue room now. There's many colors in this church.
Does anybody watch these? Is it just for me and you?
I don't know, but they better start giving us ideas to talk about because we're going to be running out pretty soon.
Have we had all the compassionate, controversial conversations?
Yeah,
that can
there's
be
nothing
had?
else that's controversial out there. Now we have a long list, but they kind of overlap, and then we end up
Right.
kind of going down rabbit holes. And we'll try to make them shorter. I think that's the one thing too.
Shorter would be good. You know
hour and a
what?
half is a lot to slog through.
I feel like I would do this if it was just. I mean, we do this.
I know. we just decided, hey, we should just start filming it, right?
Right.
So this is our life. All right. So what were we going to talk about, Matthew? You had an idea.
We just started talking about like the concepts of reward and punishment, but we got there a funny way. So I was sharing with you. I was sharing with you some personal things that are happening in our family, where a family member is sick, and another way to get at the same point would be Cephas's genetic abnormalities and the pain that he suffers as a child.
This is your third youngest. Right?
Yes, third youngest, number 10. He has a genetic mutation, and part of the consequences of that mutation is that he has chronic pain, has since he was a baby. So we were talking about that, and your reply was, so
there's no God.
exist,
Yeah, right. So we both agreed that there is no God, right?
Is that what we agreed?
Yeah, because you
won.
Why would
We're all
Cephas
dead.
be in pain? He's just a
Right.
sweet little guy. He doesn't deserve anything like that. So, anyway, and then you had a really cool thought the other day.
So the thought that the thought experiment I was doing the other day was, what if all like cosmic reward and punishment was aligned with behavior? Like when you dig, bad things never happen to good people.
Right. What if good things happen to good people?
Good things
and bad
only
things
happen to good
bad
people, and bad
Yeah.
things only happen to bad people. And so
because that's one of the questions of
Right.
of religions.
Right.
Why do bad things happen to good people? Right.
And good things happen to bad people. Maybe
Right.
that would be a problem too.
Exactly.
So what if you align those purposes and you say good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people? And the problem with that world is that you don't have really any sense for who is actually good. Because if you turn around and I steal some money out of your wallet, and then on the way home,
There's no money in my wallet. I was just kidding.
on the way home I get hit with a crowbar, like
Right.
falling out of the sky or whatever happens. And every time in my life I do something bad happens to me, then there's no sense in which I've ever done it. I mean, there's no way to tell if I've ever done anything good. It almost has to be an undetermined outcome in order for something to be genuinely good.
Right.
Like you have to be able to do something irrespective of the consequence in order for it to properly be a good thing.
Right. So the question is, does punishment work as a deterrent? Right. I mean, that's one way. Right. Does punishment work as a deterrent? Right. To say, oh, you'll spend your life in prison if you rape somebody or if you kill somebody.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, that doesn't stop people raping and killing. But the idea was, I suppose, right? The idea is, no, prison's horrible, but because a big part of it is punishment, right? Just vengeance. But let's say we're talking about the deterrent part of it. Does it work to say, if you do something bad's going to happen to you? It might work. But because I think most people that do the bad things say, "Oh, well, I won't get caught. It won't happen to me because of whatever, whatever."
Right.
But
I,
we were talking.
that's almost a different question to me, though.
Yeah.
Deterrence is one thing. Like, I can buy deterrence. I think that actually squares with me.
But you said if good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people, no matter what.
Right.
So in other words, the deterrent would be I'm not going to be mean to you because I'm going to get a crowbar falling on me, right?
Right.
That would be a point where a deterrent works
Right.
if it actually does change my behavior. If I decide, okay, I'm not going to be mean to Matthew.
It's interesting to think about what the world would look like if all of our outcomes were aligned with those.
Yeah. I was talking about this earlier, and I probably mentioned it on another session as well. But to me, like, and I was told this to my children and stuff. It's like, about what is like really being a grown. What is maturity? Like, how do you know when you really are a mature person as opposed to a child, right? And to me, one of the marks of maturity, probably the mark, is genuinely deriving happiness from someone else's happiness. You know what I mean? And some people never ever get there, but like to see that you're happy makes me happy, right? And
is that an incentive?
Well, see, the idea is, I mean, maybe that just makes me feel better. But like, let's just say, you like me feeding your parking meter and you don't know about it.
Right.
Right. Let's say that there's a parking meter that's expired and there's a car in the space, and I go, oh, I'll just put a quarter in. I don't know the guy.
Right.
I don't know the person who's driving the car. They're never going to know. They might not even ever know that it expired.
Happened.
Right. But I get a feeling of, wow, I did something nice for somebody. This guy's going to come out and he's not going to have a ticket. That's nice. And I genuinely feel good about it. It's like, oh, there's one piece of candy. You can have it, or I can have it. It would make me feel good to have it because I like the candy, right? But then to watch you enjoy it makes me happy. Ideally, that's maturity, right? Is I can actually be happy by sacrificing something and watching someone else be happy, and that's not really. I mean, that's not a reward type situation. It's sort of a self-imposed reward, right?
Right.
But I don't get rewarded for giving you the candy or for feeding somebody else's meter.
I wonder about all this. Like, I'm trying to process my thoughts as we talk about this. There is some reward associated with that good. It's out of the immediate. Like, I often think of maturity in terms of long-range thinking and planning. Like, that's one of the big differences between, like, let's say, a small child and an adult is the ability to understand long-range consequence and future planning and delayed gratification and delayed reward. Is plugging the meter in that case, is it a kind of, like, really extrapolated delayed gratification? Like, making the world a better place is the incentive structure? And so if something like that is the case, then it still is doing something good for some sense of reward.
Well, I mean,
because wouldn't you have to do something good that caused you bad in order to really transfer any?
Well, I mean, it causes me bad in that now I'm down a quarter.
I suppose.
And it probably causes me bad in that I don't get the candy.
Right.
And I might be really hungry. I mean, that.
So it's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
So we're saying that sacrifice is intrinsic to real good.
Right. If you sacrifice, if you can gain pleasure from sacrifice, that's pretty awesome.
Ooh,
I mean,
this is Christian
that's
theology
mature,
here.
Right?
So God is real. So
because it doesn't happen, there is no God. No, I and this is what I try to instill in my children. And the thing is, you can't really teach this. You have to get gratification. You can't teach here's how to get gratification, right? So you have to actually see it happen. The only way you can do that is to model behavior, right? You can go, oh, I just put a quarter in the pocket. Oh, that's going to make that person's day,
right?
And then that's it. You're done. And then maybe your child looks at it and goes, it's pretty neat,
Is the state ruining our morality by not accepting coins in meters anymore?
You can still use the parking pass to help somebody.
Yeah.
Whip
I can imagine pulling a quarter out of my pocket. I can hardly imagine pulling my wallet out and sticking a card in a parking meter. on a random.
Then you're going to hell, dude. You're a bad person.
I'm a bad person.
You know, I guess we know.
When we were kids, the cult classic Clockwork Orange was big in my friend set. Do you remember that movie?
Is that a cult classic, or is it just a freaking classic, Oscar-winning, high-profile, great movie, one of the best movies ever made?
I don't know, but
Yeah,
you're a punk rocker, so I'm going to go with cult classic.
Yeah, okay. No, I not that book. That movie's amazing, and I actually saw it not that long ago, and then I decided I hadn't read the book, and I read the book. It's fantastic, and the book is actually polar opposite. They have different endings.
Right.
And I can't remember which was which. I don't remember which, but in one of them, he kind of learns the lesson, right? He's like, okay, I'm not going to do bad because it hurts me.
In the movie, it ends with his old gang buddies roughing him up, and he can't fight back.
Right. And then in the book, I believe that I don't remember things, which is why I'll read it again and be like, oh my God, this is awesome.
So
What's going
good.
to happen? So, but I believe that he just reverts back to he accepts the pain, and then he just goes back to, the idea is that you can't change fundamentally who you have let yourself become over a period of years.
So we're talking Greek for anybody who hasn't seen it. The premise of the film and the book, Stanley Kubrick made the movie. I don't remember who's the author.
I don't remember. I don't know.
The premise of the story is that it's kind of like a future dystopia, and there's a lot of like weird Russian slang and strange optics in the movie. But there's this violent street gang, and the gang leader, the roughest of all of them, gets caught and put in prison. And there's a experimental treatment where they do a Pavlovian conditioning, where they cause a violent, sick reaction at any thoughts of violence.
Yeah, they show he has to watch movies of rapes and horrible violence while he's being tortured.
And so it makes a conditioned response. Anytime something violent happens, he gets sick.
Just thinking about it makes him physically ill.
So then they release him from prison and show him around like a pony. Like, look, we can beat on him now, and he hates violence now. And the moral question of the movie is if you have no choice about your actions, like if you're constrained to not be able to do bad, is it good?
Or did you change the person?
Right.
I mean,
if you've only controlled them.
Right. Yeah.
And the answer generally is no.
Right. I think that's what the book was about. Is that you
people are what they are, whether they're controlled or not.
Right.
So let's talk about deterrence for a minute, because deterrence is something that I can. So I don't think that you can make positive good through. I don't know, positive reinforcement. I suppose you can condition positive good. Can you do that? So we model with our children.
We need to talk
reason.
about this at some point. It's kind of an iffy topic, I know, for you guys. But when I think back on my raising my children, who are now 20 and 19, I'm not kidding. I don't think I can remember a single time that I punished them. I didn't.
How do you define punishment? Did you ever employ consequences?
I never hit them. I never yelled at them. There was never a go to your room. There was never where you're not going to have this now because of this behavior. Nothing, And it's interesting because I just got a puppy about a year ago, and
we both did.
Yeah, and I remember when I was growing up, my father, for this memory really is just vivid in my mind, but the dog pooped inside or something, and my dad grabbed the dog and said, you see that, no, and he hit him with a newspaper and then threw him outside, and it shocked me, first of all, because my father's not a violent person, and just to see that was like, wow, what it was very shocking, and that was what you did. I mean, that's how you train dogs not to do that. But now there's the prevailing thought is that you just positive reinforcement and not negative. The negative reinforcement doesn't really work.
You just tell them good when they poop outside. You don't tell them bad when they poop inside.
Right. You show them to go outside, and then when they do poop, you give them food, and you say, "Oh, that's so great," But the idea there, and it's the same with children, right? I want to be the protector of my dog. I want my dog to look at me and be happy and go, okay, here's a person that's never going to hurt me. I don't want to hurt my dog in order to teach it to do something else. Right? I don't want the dog to fear me. I don't want my children scared of me.
Right.
You know, my cousin, my uncle is very, very authoritarian, and spanks and does and everything like that. And my cousin is, now he's a grown person in his 50s, and he said to this day, when he talks to his father, he sort of stands outside a striking range. He loves his father; they get along great. But and I'm just like, if that would break my heart more than anything else if my child was afraid of me. If my child ever
right, felt that way.
So to me, it is possible to live a life, to have respectable, sweet, loving children and puppies without ever hitting them, without ever yelling at them, without ever sending them to their room or depriving them of things that they like.
I have to admit, I use dog shaming. When I come in and the dog's got in the trash, I say, "You bad dog, you should not have gone into that," and she cowers her head.
Right.
So
the other day, I got home and my dog had eaten. She actually doesn't destroy things. This is kind of a new thing.
We both have female. Sure. Rocket's a female.
Yes.
Oh.
And she actually completely demolished a pair of AirPods.
I'm surprised she hasn't demolished them. You have very little space and a lot of stuff.
Very little space, and two members of my family who are just absolute slobs. When they're done with something, they just drop it, and it's out of their existence forever.
I'm not naming names.
No, naming names.
There's only 4 of you.
Right. One of them will go, "Where's my socks?" And I'm like, "Did you try the refrigerator?" They could be anywhere.
How about the freezer?
Could be anywhere. I mean, wherever it was that you last decided that you did not need them in your life, that's where they are, and they could be anywhere.
So this is a result of not being punished.
Yeah, right. They're just horrible children. Oh, I don't know what to do. They're all over me. But for some reason, the dog Rocket has never destroyed things that weren't really hers. I mean, she'll play with the ball and it'll go under in the sheets, and then as she's trying to get the sheets out, she'll rip the sheets or whatever, stuff like that. Anyway, recently she's been rebelling. I don't know what, but she destroyed
dog.
She destroyed the AirPods, right?
That's a big deal.
And I just explained to her, please don't do that.
So you sat down and had a conversation.
I was like, Rocket, these, I like these. These are mine, and now I don't have them anymore. So I don't like that. Just in the future,
did she feel bad?
Yeah, she apologized. We're good.
I'm glad
now.
you guys worked that out.
Yeah.
I'll have to try that approach.
So dog shaming. So tell me about your. You don't do you hit your dog? Do you like?
No, I don't think dogs should be hit.
Do you do negative?
Although, I don't think people should hit dogs. In the natural world, though, like in a pack, that's a violent corrective system. Like the natural order for a dog is to be bit or nipped or whatever by its mother in training or by the pack leader later. I'm not sure those are good models for human behavior, but I'm just saying a dog in its natural environment would be subject to that kind of...
Right. I mean, it's hard to say that now because they've been domesticated for so many years and so
we
many
can look at
generations
wolves.
And generations. Yeah, but like my dog...
is not a wolf.
We did a genetic test and it is 0.3% wolf.
Right.
I mean, that's so far removed that it has more, it's more genetically similar to other animals probably. But no, I mean, not to discount what you're saying. I do understand what you're saying, that in nature, negative reinforcement is part of it. But also, we don't really fully understand how dogs work in nature, and what are they thinking? Are they really hurting each other? Is there a respect thing? Are they fearful of each other?
Right.
Is it more of a nurturing thing? I mean, when they play, they grab each other's throats and throw each other around, and it looks violent, but it isn't. It's... Do
you roughhouse with your dog?
Oh yeah.
I do a little bit, but I'm cautious with it because we have little babies around, and so it's been we have a retriever, and so we picked that breed because they're very good with children.
Right.
And Galilee will crawl on her and
Rocket is also that way. I mean, she's a pit mix, but pit bulls are also amazing
nanny
with little
dogs.
children.
Mhm.
You can pull her ears and climb all over them, and then no problems at all. And she has a very soft bite. Like she never, she'll take things out of your hand just so gently.
So, the natural world uses negative reinforcement, right? Like cause and effect is a negative reinforcement.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of hard. Like I said, we don't really understand animals, but like for instance,
No, I'm talking
if you eat a black and yellow creature and die because
Right.
it's poisonous, then your species eventually learns.
Right.
Okay, that's you didn't get a reward for not eating it,
Right.
right? You died when you did. So that's negative reinforcement, right?
And if you don't look both ways when you cross the street, you get hit by a car, and
Right.
like cause and effect it works much better off of the negative than the
Right.
I don't know if that's better, but it seems pretty immediate with the negative. That's not entirely true. If you smoke your whole life, you by the time you're 60, you have emphysema and your life is miserable. That's a negative reinforcement.
And you knew that the whole time.
Yeah, but it's a delayed punishment. Like you got the gratification of
Right.
smoking all those years.
Yeah. So let's
is the natural? I'm trying to draw cues from reality. So I'm not saying that social order should work like the natural order, but I think it's demonstrative that the way the world works is that if you don't operate certain ways, there are either rewards and punishment based on your conduct in the real world.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of probably our way of thinking. At
But
least.
does that guide how you behave?
Yeah,
Effectively?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I would smoke if there were no consequences. I might.
Yeah.
I eat sugar to a detrimental degree, probably. That's got to catch up to you at some point. Like but it's a spectrum, right? So like it seems like a small negative potential outcome, and so whatever. But I think that in the West, probably the way that we think about society and family and all these things is drawing its cues from the natural world. Like if you don't take your sword with you and you go out into the woods, you could be gored by a boar, and so you have habits of how to be in the world where if you don't do it this way, then you're going to get hurt. If you do it this way, then life works. Like courting and mating, finding a partner for life, like all these things have rules attached to them that have positive and negative outcomes based on behavior. So I think that there's kind of a human intuitive way of being in the world that says, well, if the world is treating me like that, if the future is treating me like that, then teaching children to respond that way isn't immoral. Like if I don't teach the child not to touch the stove, if they touch the stove, they're gonna get hurt by nature, or I can control their behavior.
Right. I mean, yes, that is true. I mean, negative reinforcement happens by the fact that we have gravity. I mean,
Right.
It just happens. But for instance, the stove thing, I tell my children, don't touch the stove because it will hurt you, and it'll, you could get a scar. It could be a permanent thing. I could show them a scar. I could tell them stories or whatever. But if they do touch the stove, it won't have been me yelling at them or me
Right.
screaming. They won't have a fear of me, right? It'll be a self-imposed lesson, which are often, the best kind. All you can do is teach and hope that it sticks.
Is that an either or construct though? Like if I tell the child, and this is more like how it would happen in my house, say 2-year-old Gally, don't touch the stove, and she reaches out to touch the stove, I would probably flick her hand or tap her like that and say, don't touch the stove. Papa said don't touch the stove. I don't want her to have that consequence.
Sure.
I don't feel like she's
Yeah.
capable of the
Right.
reasoning to have that consequence, and so I control that outcome. But I control it with a negative. Like she doesn't like that experience. She doesn't like her hand to be flicked. At some point in her life, she probably will, like when I'm not there, realize that the stove is hot.
Right.
It will reinforce, though, potentially, oh, Papa was trying to take care of me. that's why he told me not to touch the stove. Like, you could imagine
Yes,
that
I mean,
scenario with
my-
1,000 other.
My cousin, who stays outside of the striking range of his father, does realize his father was really trying
Trying to help him.
do the best that he could, and respects him, and really thinks, wow, I turned into a good person because of this, But my friend had a wood burning stove and just and drew like a line on the ground. This is the stop line. You're not allowed
Right.
to go past this line, and they made it sort of a game out of it.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
and other ways. And I'm not exactly sure how, but the child ended up never touching the stove and never getting flicked away.
Right.
There are ways of positively reinforcing. But some things you have to learn. Wait, how do you know what hot is, right? How do you know what is pain? It's just that I don't want to be the source of it. I don't want them to ever look at me and say, is he going to yell at me? Is he going to kiss me? I don't know. It's interesting. Just today, I was talking to Magali. One of her friends is seeing a therapist. Never liked therapy. Was all like, "Oh, I'm above it all. Nobody can teach me anything." And he went to a store, and this person was mean to them. The person at the store wouldn't serve them because of the way that they looked. And he goes, "I've never been, treated negatively because of the way I look. It was a shock." And the therapist was like, "Yes, you have. Your dad didn't want you to be fat, wanted you to be skinny, and didn't like that, and got mad at you, when you didn't look the way that he looked. You spent your whole life doing that." It's like, oh my gosh, you're totally right. And the therapist said, if you're going to hit your children, hit them every day.
Oh man.
Because otherwise,
It's unpredictable.
they're going to feel, they don't know what the rules are. They're going to fear you, not knowing. To me, childhood is a search for what the boundaries are, right? It's like, that's all. You just need to know what the boundaries are. You need to know, this, I will always be this way. There has to be 100% consistency. I don't ever want them to think, oh, is he going to flip out?
Right.
We have an adopted son whose mother, not real mother, but this person that took care of her, was just horrible. He would do one thing and she would flip out and scream and punch him, and then the next day he would do the same thing and no problem at all. He never knew what was going to trigger her. He never knew. So that complete uncertainty of punishment and reward. If we live in a world where good gets punished by people get good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people. What if it's just completely random? Which it is. We're sort of fearful, right? We're not 100% sure. But imagine if your parent said don't touch the stove, and then you don't, and then they hit you for it.
Right.
You're just like, what? Everything is confusing.
I certainly agree with that. The uncertainty is worse than anything. I don't know that it's an either or case though. I was a Gen Xer that grew up being spanked unashamedly, like in public almost,
Yeah.
Like there was no hesitation that my parents had, like they lived in, that was a different world 40 years ago, and I don't feel that my parents were unpredictable. I feel like if I got in trouble with my parents, I knew exactly why. I had transgressed something that now I can see was a legitimate boundary that my parents had, and I don't want to root all this conversation in my anecdotal experiences, but my anecdotal experiences are that I'm not afraid of my parents. I think I have a healthy respect for them.
My mother was crazy. She would just fly off the handle, throw stuff around the room. She hit us with wooden spoons. That was her big thing. She's like, I'm coming up there with a wooden spoon. And she was just all crazy and like hit us and smack us around for nothing. Like, something would happen, it wouldn't be my fault. And she'd say it's your fault, and then I would get hit. And I'm like, and then I lived with my father, and he never raised a hand to me, ever. Never, not a single negative thing. He never punished me. He never talked negatively to me. He never yelled at me. Nothing. And I love my things have gotten complicated, but I had a great relationship with my father. My mother, I never really forgave her for being the way that she was. She was awful. She was a terrible woman. I mean, and she's apologized and said, "Oh, I was a terrible mother," and she was. But she was completely unpredictable.
Right.
And and even when it wasn't, it's like, okay, so I'm afraid of her. It wasn't even that I was afraid. I thought she was an insane person.
Right.
Because one day she flips out and hits us with a wooden spoon, and then the other day, so okay, she was always kind of angry, but.
Right.
But that didn't affect our behavior at all, except to just go, whoa, stay away from this person who, don't be like her. I remember many times thinking, the way that I feel right now, remember this, don't ever let your kids feel this way.
Right.
So I guess in that sense it was positive.
Right.
I never hit my children with a wooden spoon.
Right.
But let's get back to the just
big picture.
Do we want to live in a world where good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people? Is that what we want?
I think the unpredictability makes the world good.
Yeah. Would there be art? Would there be anything if there were no conflict? I guess what I'm asking now is, what if we did live in a world where bad things happen to bad people? Would bad things still happen? Because
would people choose the bad consequence anyhow? Probably.
Yeah, there's
You'd get so mad, you're just like, fine, I'll take the lump.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit you anyhow.
Yeah. I hate the fact that I have enemies, but there are people that I don't like.
Mm.
There's a guy in our community who was really, really mean to my wife, and
who could be mean to her?
Yeah, and scared my children a bunch of times, and he's just an awful person. And so I just decided I'm not going to talk to this guy anymore. I'm just going to pretend he doesn't even exist, and then he walks past me. I don't say hello. I just don't acknowledge him at all. And that's not cool, right? For me, that's not a good way to be. But my life is better with him not in it. I'm a happier person knowing that I don't have to navigate this sort of struggle. So I accept that what I'm doing is bad. You know what I mean? For the reward of not having to deal with this guy. But I hate that about myself. I don't want to have enemies. I don't want to be mean to people. I don't want to. I'm not outwardly mean to him, but I don't talk to him.
You're not kind to him.
No. I don't say
like
hello to him. I
general
completely
ethic would
ignore
be.
him.
Right.
If he's walking behind me, I'm not going to close the door in front on his face. I'll open it, but I won't say hello. So, I think the bad things would still happen. Because sometimes things are so bad for you that you just don't care. You're like, okay, fine. And then there's also sociopaths who don't really understand.
Or people that are traumatized and broken from other bad people. Or...
Right.
Well, so how do we think about the penal system?
Well,
and the punitive
American
actions
jail?
of the state.
American
So let's not analyze the
that's
American
horribly
justice system, because
that's
there's a lot of problems. But let's just talk about the idea. Is it warranted and appropriate for the state to say, for instance, if you hurt people, we're going to lock you in a cage so you can't hurt people?
Well, there's two reasons to put somebody in a cage. Okay, one is to protect people outside of the cage, right? To protect society. You don't want him killing people or whatever. Serial killer, for instance, you put them in a cage so they don't kill people. And then the other reason is revenge.
Mm-hmm.
The people that he's hurt get to see that he's in a cage, right? And
those are probably pretty mixed. There's a lot of overlap between those two things.
Yeah, but
because the revenge is mixed with the idea and satisfaction that he can't hurt other people the way he's hurt you.
Right, but I also, I've thought about why do they electrocute people? Why do they do the
lethal injection?
Lethal injection. Why not overdose on heroin while they're sleeping? there's so many ways, so many actual painless ways to kill somebody, right? And I read an article about the company that makes some of
the lethal injection stuff.
Because it's multiple.
It's a cocktail.
It's a cocktail too,
right.
But the first one relaxes your muscles, and then the second one
it's like a paralytic.
And it's a paralytic, and that apparently it's not painless.
Right.
We don't see the pain, so it doesn't upset us on the outside, but it isn't
the paralytic keeps you from showing the pain that you're feeling.
And there were questions about
Cruel
why
and
is
there
that?
was a suit about cruel and unusual punishment over
Right,
this.
and when they said, well, why don't you make it painless? And they're like, well, we do want
We do want him to hurt.
a little bit
right?
of hurt, right? We want it to hurt a little bit, and that just kind of like, you know, hit me in a weird way. You know, punishment is part of it. I mean, you know, revenge is part of it.
Right.
I wish that wasn't the case. I mean, if we really believed in rehabilitation, then we would rehabilitate. We don't. I mean, honestly, we don't. There's no, you know, I mean, there's a pretense, you know, there's classes, but, you know, we don't teach prisoners that that there's times in life where you have to be quiet, right? When you go into a library, you have to be quiet, and then there's times where you have to be respectful, and when you go into a church, and then there's times that it's okay to roughhouse, and times that it's not okay. You know, we here's how to live in society. We don't do that. Right, in prison, you scream and yell all the time, and you know, whatever you want to do, and you're locked in a cage, and you know, so this punitive system doesn't work at all, and for me.
Do you think? I guess here's the premise is that it's not just for the person suffering the punishment, but for people who would consider doing actions like that. That the negative
Right.
outcome causes some people, at least, to think maybe I don't. I mean, because certainly the criminal class is trying to avoid prison
Right.
generally.
I would say that factor that is successful 0% of the time. I think that has nothing whatsoever. I mean, I'm not going to kill somebody because I can't imagine killing somebody. You know, I'm not going to kill somebody for my own reasons. Right? I'm
Right.
not going to end a human life. But so I say. I mean, I haven't
Right.
gone home and had my whole family slaughtered, and then dude standing there with a knife. I
Right.
don't know what I would do, but
But
generally, right?
Right.
Philosophically, I'm not going to end a human life. The fact that I would get punished for it doesn't have anything to do with my decision. And then somebody, you know, a hitman who kills people for $10,000.
He's
you know,
calculating that risk already.
You know, and he's just saying, well, I'm not going to get caught because I'm going to do the X, Y, and Z. I don't think any criminal goes, wait a second, I'm going to kill this guy. Wait a second. If I kill him, I might get caught, and then I might end up spending the rest of my life in a cage. So I'm going to not do it. I don't think that happens. I really don't.
I'm not sure
I
I
think that
agree.
people think they're going to get away with it.
I'm not sure I agree, and here's why. Because like if you remove that potential, like if I wasn't worried about going to jail, don't you think that like how many cases of road rage would end in death and fatalities?
Well,
like if you didn't fear going to jail, like you don't think that controls some people's behavior?
Maybe, but
Certainly
I don't know.
on a spectrum,
I mean,
like why do you pay your taxes? Like I don't pay my taxes to be a good person. Maybe I would. Maybe I would
Right.
reform my behavior. But
no, I mean, I would. I mean, I pay my taxes because eventually, if I don't, people with guns are going to show up
Right.
at my door. But if
so that controls your behavior for the social good.
Yes, right. You know, were it restructured, and I got to say, okay, I'll spend 30% of
Here's
my
my
income,
share. Here's
and
where I
this is
wanted
gonna
to go.
to public schools,
Right.
and this is going to go to
Hey,
roads.
why don't we
and
do
this is
that?
gonna
That's a
go to-
fantastic idea.
What?
Like okay,
Yeah,
here's
like-
your share
like,
of the taxes.
let's
You
decide-
owe X
Yeah.
thousands of dollars.
How many-
Here's the funds you can put it in.
Yeah, and how many people are going to put it into bombing brown people? Probably not that many, right?
I don't know.
If we really
Maybe
yeah, but no,
more than
if
we
it,
think.
If it was really a reflection, well, maybe let's not. Yeah, you're right. People are horrible.
But
There's no God.
so the problem would be if we did that there's some things that the state would say are necessary. Like say you live in a county where everybody wants to support the local military base and nobody wants to pay teachers.
Right.
Then the state ends up with a great military base and dumb kids.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I like the idea. You know, me personally, very liberal. I like the idea of a social floor.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, you know, in France, which is not perfect by any stretch, but I lived there, and in France they decided as a society that they want the average person to be healthy and educated. So healthcare is free, education's free. We want our citizens to be educated. I mean that's.
Why-
I mean,
why don't we make food free?
Aren't there things that we can agree on? We don't want people to be starved. We don't want people to be homeless. I mean, right now I live in Cambridge. There's like 30, well, within a mile of my house, there's 30 mansions that are empty, that are standing there empty right now because people are off in touring the world, or
They're down at the Cape for
they're
the summer.
vacationing in the Cape, in their Martha's Vineyard home, and there's people starving in the streets with no home.
Right.
I mean, can't we figure this out?
No, we can't apparently.
Yeah. Well,
But why?
Or we are unwilling to.
Why do you think it doesn't? Why does so like in France? Let's take some socialized European country. Why do they stop where they stop and start where they start? Like if that applies to, we don't want people to be dumb and we don't want people to be sick, so we're going to offer free college and free healthcare. Why not free housing and free food?
Why not? I mean, there was. Denmark or some country experimented with the
UBI,
universal
basic income.
Basic income. Well, that's it. I mean, that doesn't educate you, but I mean, healthcare and education is something that the government can give. The government doesn't own all the property. They can't give housing to everybody.
Right.
To an extent, but universal basic income will allow you to buy a house, to allow you to afford an apartment.
Or inflate
right?
the rental market that it.
It was an experiment that worked. I mean, for the most part, it worked. People thought, the idea was, well, then nobody will work. Everybody will just be lazy and just sit there and do nothing and collect money. It didn't work that way. People did what they wanted to do. There are people who want to be electricians. There are people that want to be plumbers. There are people that want to sweep the streets and live in a clean place.
Do you think that there are people that don't want to do anything?
Yeah.
And
I'm sure there are.
So those.
I think it's very, very small percentage of people. I mean, I can't. I would go nuts. I mean, imagine being in a room. It's like, okay,
you would go.
You can
nuts.
watch TV.
Right.
No way. I would last a day.
You'd run 1,000 miles a week.
Oh my gosh. I would go crazy. So I don't think that people. I don't think it's in people's nature to do nothing.
Well, there's
but anyway,
some more Christian theology.
What is it?
There's some more
let's talk
Christian
about that,
theology.
I want to get into. We need to talk about, where God fits into all this, because when we talk about the world where good happens to good, people say, okay, why do bad things happen to good people? That's a reason that there isn't a God. Do we want to live in a world where good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people?
Yeah, I think the answer is no.
Well, isn't that paradise?
I think paradise is probably the removal of all the bad people.
Well, yeah. And isn't that what we want in the end?
I don't know.
I guess that's what we're doing, but heaven's a place where nothing ever happens.
I don't think that's true at all.
Yeah, well, it's just, how can there be...
The God that created the cosmos is not going to be boring.
Yeah, the God that delights in suffering isn't going to...
I don't think God delights in suffering. In fact, it says that he doesn't. He says that he doesn't delight in the death of the wicked.
Right. But, we talked about this before, but he just puts a tree and says, don't eat from the tree, and then just sits back. Because I remember recently, actually, after we did the thing about the tree, is that somebody said that I saw somewhere, it was like, what would happen if Eve didn't eat the apple?
Right.
Wouldn't have mattered. Something else would have happened, because that's the kind of God we're talking about.
I don't know about
That's
all
the
that.
kind of God we're talking about. He put temptation there, and if that didn't do it, something else would. Do you think he wanted to just sit there and have people just be frolicking around and happy?
Yeah, I think God was very happy with this situation. He says as much.
Then he allowed it to the omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent God allowed it to fall apart. See, that's why I can't believe in a
This is a
omniscient,
circle, though.
omnipotent,
Like we just went through the whole exercise to determine that us in our little tiny pea brains think there's probably a good reason that bad things happen to good people, because it creates a world where there can be sense made of an actual good intention and motive that would disappear in a different kind of world.
Bad things happen to good people because we live in a world that is not governed or looked after by an intelligent being. bad things happen to good people because there is randomness in the world, because we're
But that's
just a
not the
collection
question.
of molecules. I mean, would I rather that Cephas not be in pain every day of his life? Of course, I would do. I would give one of my legs for that.
Sure.
I would do any. I would. What would I sacrifice for Cephas to be happy? We talked about it earlier. A lot.
Right. But that's not the question. I'm not even making that claim. I'm just talking about, what do we think is better? Is it better to have a world where we can actually perceive a good thing? Like, because I don't know if something good is going to happen to me, when I do something good, I'm not doing it to get a reward.
Right.
And that, I think, is a better world than the alternative. Like, forget about an omnipotent God watching over the machinations of the universe and the cosmos. Let's just talk about what we think is a better or an inferior or a better way for the world to be. For what it's worth, I think it's better that the world exists in a way that you can actually do a good thing. And that world seems to be predicated on the idea that when I do a good thing, it's not respective of some kind of reward.
Right.
And so,
I mean, if you live in a world where you could do a good thing, that means you have to live in a world where bad things are possible.
so to me, that's the justification for the incident in the garden.
Well, if you ask me, would I rather live in a world where Cephas is in pain, or would I rather live in a world where I'm frolicking in a garden and unaware of my nakedness? And I would honestly, I'd choose the second one. I
Don't
really
eat
would.
the apple.
I mean, there's the Kurt Vonnegut book. Is it Galapagos? Something, but it takes place like 1,000,000 years in the future. It's told by a ghost from today. It's very odd. But basically, as a race of people, we go back into the ocean, and we like frolic around as like dolphins, and we just play all the time.
I have heard of this.
And
I
that's
haven't read it, though.
that's like where we go. I'd take that. I'd take it. I want that. I would rather live in a world where we are frolicking around as dolphins, unaware, than live in a world where Cephas is in pain all the time for no reason.
Are there no sharks with the dolphins?
No sharks. Nothing bad happens. Nothing bad happens. Nothing bad happens. Nothing bad happens. And where God fits into this is just like one of the fundamental building blocks of why I believe that there isn't a God, right? Is the bad things happening to good people. Why?
This is so funny to me.
Why? It's just like so crazy.
I think we just justified how bad things happen to good people makes sense of the world.
Right, and my justification was we live in a completely random world that is not overseen by any good force.
But we think it's a good thing. Like, we think that randomness created a good thing.
No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that.
You don't think that?
I think randomness is the way that it is because there's no other choice. I mean, that's how life works. And molecules
So we only
glue
think it's
together
good
and-
because it is what it is.
We don't think it's good or bad. We think that's the way that it is. I mean, I think that having an omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent God that decided to make it this way is not cool. Is bad.
But
Because
so it's bad that an
he's-
omnipotent God made it this way, but it's good that it's this way.
No, I'm not saying it's good that this way. I'm not saying.
I thought we had reached that conclusion.
No, it's not good that Cephas is in pain. There is no way that you can couch this in any way. That's even if you say, okay, well, we have free will, and the consequence is that Cephas is in pain. I'll give it up. I don't need free will. I would rather be the dolphin that doesn't think about anything and frolics
I think
around.
if you gave it up, you wouldn't know that Cephas existed or care about it.
Well, that may be true, but the decision I make now about giving that up is one I would gladly make. You know what I mean? And then, it's like people going, "Oh, you tried to kill yourself; it didn't work. Aren't you so glad that it didn't work?" Well, no. I mean, I'm happy and I love life and things are great right now. But I mean, if I died, I'd be dead, and then we wouldn't. Either way, right? It wouldn't matter now.
It wouldn't matter to me.
Not if you never met me, So I'm just saying.
I feel a hole.
Yeah. There's this cosmic. Where's my friend? There's this love missing. Yeah, so I don't think that I've contradicted myself. I really do believe that because bad things happen to good people, that there is no God, and if there is a God, he's an asshole. If bad things happen to good people, the fact that Cephas is in pain, sweet kid, never done anything wrong to anybody, born into a family that has done nothing but good works, has tried their very best to go to Africa and help people, and you have devoted your life to making the world a better place. Whether I agree with your religion or not, that means nothing. You are good people, very good people, who wake up every morning and go, what can I do now to make this world better? Okay? If the world was made of people like you, we'd be, that would be great, right? But Cephas is in pain. For what? For nothing. And there's a God, if you believe that is allowing this to happen. And we talked a little bit about how you maybe don't believe that he, pokes his finger into things. And maybe that's the reason that Cephas is allowed to be in pain. But an omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent God, has power and chooses not to use it, and chooses to watch Cephas wallow in agony.
We circle around this issue a lot, I think. You and I don't know that I think there's one level deeper that actually creates the dichotomy between our views. I think that's this issue is the big symptom around that, but I think there's one step lower, and I don't know how to articulate that or what actually it is, but the way I would say it is that I think a world where pain is possible and happens, and in some regards happens randomly, is also the world that creates all the good things that happen. And my own pain, my family's pain, the people I care about's pain, Jesus's pain, like the pain that happens in the world, I think I believe is a necessary part of the world that creates all of the beautiful things. I don't think that you get one without the other.
I agree.
And I would rather have pain and beauty than blandness and neither.
Right. What is heaven? Is there pain in heaven?
No.
Oh, okay. So then there is no conflict. It is bland and boring, and nothing happens.
It's a good point.
I'm just, and if that's where we want to be, then why are we accepting Cephas being in pain? You know what I mean? It's just, this is what I don't understand. It's one of the things I don't understand about almost all religions have a,
Nirvana,
we're going to some place where there is perfection. Well, where there is perfection, there can be no music, art. In order to have music work, there has to be dissonance. It can't all be one chord that's beautiful all the time, or else it wouldn't be interesting. There's got to be conflict. There's got to be resolution. There's got, people have to get, in order to have literature, things have to get hurt, right?
Okay,
People
so why is it hard to believe then that this life and its pain and suffering is the dissonance that produces the symphony?
Well, if your choice is, would you rather have silence and no pain, or would you rather have a symphony and have Cephas be in pain? I'd rather have silence, and that's really how I feel. And I think that you feel that way because I assume that you want to go to heaven. I assume that you want to be in a place where there is no pain, and if there is no pain, there is no symphony.
My hope is that this pain produces that symphony, that the beauty in the future, the beauty of the perfected world, the beauty of the resurrection is predicated on making right the things that hurt here. That it's the resolution, that heaven is the resolution, that the future epoch is the setting of all things right. And you have to know things are wrong to set them right. And so I think that this life, this existence, is where we learn those things to make those things meaningful.
So then in heaven we'll just have the memory that things weren't good, and so that way we'll remember that they are. Because, the symphony, there's going to be parts that I hate and parts that you love, and they may be the same part, right? The music, right? There's music that I don't like, and there's music that...
our musical tastes don't square very well, do they?
No, I don't. I think it's a bad example because I think they do square.
Do they?
I think we like very much of the same stuff. I like a lot of harder.
Yeah, you like
things,
harder
but
music.
you certainly did growing up.
Right.
The punk rock scene.
Right. Yeah.
But you don't really listen to that stuff anymore. Do you know Alice in Chains? Do you know these?
Oh yeah.
And did you like Alice in Chains?
Yeah, when I was a kid.
Okay.
But I wouldn't now.
But I mean, that doesn't make sense. Like you didn't. The music hasn't changed.
Right.
You either liked it, or you no longer like these minor chords with the drop D tuning, and you know what I mean. It's like maybe you don't like the violent lyrics, maybe you don't like the heroin overdose. You know, there's stuff that you don't like. But I mean, to say, oh, I used to like this music and now I don't. It's like saying, well, once the Fifth Symphony was beautiful and now it's ugly.
Well, I think
to me.
I think tastes change.
Yeah, that could be. But
we're off. All
right.
We're switching subjects. I think you're wrong.
Well, no, I don't think I don't think we're switching subjects. Honestly, if good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people, do we want to live in that world?
Right.
I do. I want to live in a world where good things happen to good people, and if that were true, then there would really be no bad people. In other words, that's heaven.
So I think that this world is necessary to make heaven heaven, and you think if heaven is possible, this world shouldn't exist.
Yeah. And if God was in fact omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent, what would be the point of slogging through this world of pain? Why would you have to watch Cephas be in agony as a parent? I mean, there's nothing worse. Why?
There is nothing worse. I mean,
why?
I don't know if there's nothing worse, but there's nothing that I've come across.
Sure, there are things that are worse, but I mean, it's bad. And for what? So that you can enjoy heaven? So that Cephas can one day have his pain taken away and then go, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
No, I don't think, I don't, it's not that to me. I think, I hate Cephas's pain. I hate when he hurts. But the things that I feel about Cephas, I think come from a world where pain is possible. Like the love that I have for him, the scarcity of life, the preciousness of a child. Like I think that those things are manifested because the world's broken. I think the idea of
well, I think the world is broken because there's no God. Because there's no God to fix it. Because the God, either that or God delights in its brokenness. That God is cool with it and just wants to watch you navigate the cracks in the broken world.
You're missing me. The positive feelings that I have for my children, for the world, for you, for my wife, require an opposite. They require relief. They require a contrast. They require, for joy to exist, pain has to exist. For music to exist, dissonance has to exist. For beauty has to exist, ugliness has to exist. For heat to exist, cold has to exist.
Right.
The world is understood in terms of contrast. And so for me, Cephas's pain is the contrast to Cephas's love. Like it's also the case that the kind of boy that he is has been shaped out of his pain, and it's made him something different than he would have been without it. So do I like that Cephas, or do I like a different Cephas that isn't shaped with those experiences?
I mean, Jerusalem isn't in constant pain, and she's a lovely, wonderful person. She would be different if she was in pain all the time, but would you have her? I mean, it's, you know what I mean? It's like all your other children are wonderful too. They didn't grow up in pain. It's like you don't like Cephas more. You're not like, oh, no. Cephas is
but there's
special.
Something unique about him because of his pain that other people don't have.
Right. Would I rather that Cephas never had pain and that uniqueness was something else? Sure.
It's just like it's like people with Downs. Like you and I have had experience with people with Downs. They're some of the most beautiful people on earth. They're wonderful. That quality is in part because of the disability.
Right, yes.
So in certain parts of the world, they've eradicated Downs. Those people don't exist there anymore.
Right.
Is the world better without them?
Of course not.
I don't think so.
Right.
So the brokenness creates the beauty.
Right, but Down syndrome people, for the most part, are not suffering in the world. Cephas is suffering,
Ah.
and I think that that there's a difference. I mean, you know, my sister had Down syndrome, and she loved life. Was just like the cutest, funniest, awesome person who just, you know, had a fantastic time. She loved it.
You should show me pictures of her sometime. I've never seen her.
But yeah, so, you know, do you want to live in a world where good things happen to good people? Maybe you don't. I do. Because,
Part of me
and I
wants to.
think that that's heaven, and we need to talk about this, just heaven, in a completely separate thing. We talk about what heaven is, because you aspire to want to be there, and yet, and you agree that nothing bad happens there, so it's got to be pretty boring. There's no symphony. Because there's no dissonance, because dissonance is something that's unagreeable, disagreeable.
Yeah, we'll have to do an episode on heaven.
Place where nothing happens. All right, this was a good one.
Yeah.
This
Felt
was a good
real.
one. Yeah. But we should wrap it up, right? How long have we been going here? We thought maybe. I looked at my watch and it said 4 seconds and it wasn't moving.
We thought we lost the
And
whole.
I was like, oh no, did that mean that this entire conversation wasn't recorded? Which we've done before, but
It's
I
only
really
happened
liked this
once,
It's
right?
only happened once, and then we learned from it. And then I guess my watch is the one that's broken, but it did work, so.
So we have it, but we had to turn it back on because we didn't hug.
We didn't
say
say goodbye. We didn't say I love you.
Love you.
I love you.